So this 944 came with earrings. The last one I had, I opened up and it came with some condoms. No, they weren't used. Batmobile Pterosaur, jet on the ceiling. You can work on all this upper stuff easy. You can get to all the spark plug wires. I don't understand why people think this is hard to work on. Yes! What's up, people? It's time for me to show you what to look for when buying a Porsche 944. So come on and check out the one I got. Just rearranged the shop, getting excited for Genius Garage 2020. Batmobile Pterosaur, jet on the ceiling. Oh yeah, you're a YouTuber. You got a Lamborghini build. You don't have a jet on your ceiling. Ha! Okay, so anyway, 944, 1983, nice car. This is the one you guys saw. I got a great deal on for $3,000 because the guy hated some Porsche snob that came out and tried to beat him up so much on it. So is this a good car or is this a junk car? So first things first, let's look it over. We're gonna look at the body, we're gonna go interior, we're gonna go engine bay, and I'm gonna try to give you my tips when I go look at a car, what I wanna try to see first of all. So the initial thing I asked him, is it a repaint? So yes, it's been repainted one time. So when you're looking at that, how was it masked off? How was it done? Do you see any flaking paint on any of the little things? The answer is really no. You do see a little bit of an edge, but some of this is from polishing, and that'll go away. Just a tiniest bit of overspray here or there, but no ugly masking off lines, really. It's actually quite good. This is not something you take to a Concours, but it looks really nice. It's not orange peely, it's not junk. So this is a pretty darn good repaint all around. I'm really pleased with that. Going beyond that, I don't know how long the car spent outside, but this is something to pay attention to. First of all, it's not rusting. I found one little bubble, but here on the rear wing, the 944 has this flexible rubber-like wing, but as you can see, there was a bunch of tree debris and stuff sitting here, and you can see these are, in fact, the drain spots right here. So this is plugged up with debris, so if you're looking at a car and it's collecting dirt and water and stuff there, the drain holes are plugged. So you just need to push those out. When you look at the car, if you come on down here and just kind of look down the side, I always like to look down the sides of cars here. One, you can see any door dings. You can see if it's been hit, if it's wavy from doing body work. You can look carefully here at the paint and whatnot. This is all quite good. Again, the mask lines, anything like that around these handles are also quite nice. You look at your door jambs, you can see a little bit of overspray here on this weather stripping, but that I can get rid of pretty quickly. Here, if you look in here, there's just a couple tiny, keep in mind this is from 1983, so gosh, it's the better part of 40 years old at this point. Tiny little bubble of rust there, nothing bad. When I go to look at a car, I mean, honestly, you can spend exorbitant amounts of time fixing body work. So unless you're really a body guy, I like to stay away from that except for small things. So fixing small things like this, no big deal. You can pick it away, you can do it by hand, you can make it really nice. So I generally try to find a car that's pretty nice body-wise that you can either rub out or do little things. I generally like to stay away from body work when it comes to it. But come on over here, I want to show you a couple things. If you stop there and look across the hood, even though that this had a bunch of debris and it's dirty, you want to look low incidence angle at the reflections, and I can see there was a little bit of a wave right here on the hood, so maybe something hit it, but it's not really so bothersome to me. It generally looks quite good. The gaps are all reasonable. I don't think it's ever been hit. It doesn't fit perfect, but it fits quite good. If you look at the front of it on the plastic bumper here, there's a little bit of warping. This waves just a little bit, but it's even. It's not cockeyed and goofy. So generally, I think this is quite good, very reasonable. There's no overspray on lights and on the bumper here, so that works out well for me. Actually, with the Porsche, the American bumpers on the 944, I don't think they look too bad. Still pointy, still nice looking. So for me, there's not really any sense in spending the money on Euro bumpers. Some people will take off these kind of squishy hard rubber guys here and just make it smooth. If that's what you like, then cool. But for some reason, I kind of like the American bumpers on the 944 a heck of a lot better than Volkswagen's American bumpers. Those were atrocious. But come on in, and these are the things to look at. Let's look inside. So if you come over here, I can show you some details. Now, another thing the guy told me right away, this item here is the wind deflector. So when you remove the sunroof here, this can either raise up and give you a little bit of a crack, or you can simply take it out and put it in your trunk, which is a lot of fun. It's kind of like a Targa roof. It's a nice big opening. This would have been your wind deflector And that actually, if I'm not mistaken, slides into this. When you put it on, it's supposed to go down. But the pieces are broken, so it's clear I'm going to have to fix something with that, but at least I have this. So when I find the hinges, not going to be a big deal. Anyway, if you look in here, I can show you the one bit of rust bubbling I found. That's right here. If you can see it and get in here, you might want to come over this way and look there. You can see the bubbling, and I will likely pick that away, buzz it with the Dremel tool, get it down to, you know, the bare metal, prime it, maybe some 415, something like that, and with a hand brush, really nice, paint it back to the proper Guards red. And if I'm not mistaken, the paint I used on my Ducati build was actually Guards red, so lo and behold, unfortunately enough, that's something that works well. I'm going to jump in the passenger side so you can see in here. But while you guys are looking, you can see that the seats are actually in quite a good condition. And that's a nice thing because leather gets expensive. Upholstery work, you know, you get money in there. And the dashboard's generally pretty decent. But this, it does have here, you can see this is about the worst of sort of cracking. It's halfway through, but it's still in good condition. Frankly, in a sort of weird way, I almost kind of like that. I kind of like the age as long as it's not falling apart. It's just the fun and the charm of vintage cars or older cars now, and call me a loon. But I'll use some nice product of some kind, whether that's something that relates to Neat's foot oil that you might find in the equestrian world, or something from Griot's Garage, or whatever. Pick your poison. Even baby oil is good to get some life back to seats like this. As a note, some people with old ones, they say they re-dye seats. They're not re-dyeing. They're just painting a bunch of crap with an airbrush on a leather seat and making it so you can't actually get like nutrients and the lubricant back to the leather. So I'm not really into that whole re-dyeing thing unless you actually got it lubricated again. So fortunately, these are in good shape, and I think they're going to be good. The headliner is okay. If you look here on the removable sunroof, it's shrunk, and there's kind of a poof going on, but at least it's straight. So we'll see there. We'll look at that next time. If you look here at the dashboard, you'll notice someone beforehand put in a Momo Monte Carlo, the steering wheel. Actually, I think a little more period correct for the mid to late 80s, but not hateful. Looks really good. I may choose to put a spacer here because the steering wheel is rather close to the dash. And then here, if you look at the lights and see if they'll illuminate a little bit for us. I am a big fan of the early 944 and the 924 round gauges. I think it's kind of neat that the tachometer is effectively upside down and swings like this. But also, if you notice, the so-called glass here, which is an acrylic, comes to a point. And the reason it's like that is so that if the sun comes in here, there's no angle where it glares and makes it so you can't see your gauge. So that's the reason why this acrylic is pointed here. I just think that's really nice. I think it looks really good and I enjoy it. So the mileage on here says 6,558, which I can promise you is 106,000. Not too bad on 944 that's been kept up and had some oil changes. No weird noises, no smoke happening, great oil pressure, transmission's good, clutch is good. So in general, all the big things are happy. Suspension's decent too. So it's survived nicely. And the tripometer and odometer are in fact working. So if you're looking at some of these older cars and German cars, Mercedes, Porsches, etc., when you test drive it, make sure that your odometer and tripometer is in fact working. Because a trick that some lazy and slightly unscrupulous people can do is if their odometer breaks because they push the tripometer going backwards or something, they just won't fix it for years and years and years, put miles on it and won't show it, and then fix it before they sell it. I don't know of anybody exactly doing that, but I know they break, and I know that's what people can do, so I assume that's what they do. And this car reflects about 100,000 miles, so I feel quite confident in that. It's got great oil pressure right when it starts up and when it warms up. So those are the big ones to check. Obviously, it was cooling. I could see coolant flowing. So these are all the major things I want to check out. And then when I went to drive it, you guys will remember that the belt was squeaking quite a lot on the alternator belt, but that's really no big deal. I'm going to replace the belts. We'll tighten it. That'll go away immediately. But I wanted to make sure that it shifted through all the gears well. 944s that are driven by idiots, they'll ruin the synchros because I don't know if they can't drive or they just sit with their hand like ham-fisted pushing on the gear shift while they're driving. As an example, when you're driving a stick shift car, it's not that big a deal if you gently rest your hand on it like this, because I realize in street driving you shift more than you do when you're racing in some capacity, so you can get lazy and just put your hand there. In race driving, you want to keep your hands on the steering wheel all times and then just reach over only to shift gears. The problem with a lot of people is they just rest their big ham-fisted, you know, meat hooks on there, and they'll hold it against the synchro and wear out the synchro while they're driving. That's one thing. So if the car shifts, if you can just shift it straight into second gear and third gear, no problem, no grinding, then you know that it's strong. But I have driven 944s way back when, and even lately test driving it, where it's almost impossible not to grind gears. So the synchros slow down, and you need to consider that if you're going to buy it, about having to fix it or replace the transmission. Transaxle, actually, it's in the rear. So that's something. Clutch was also great. It engaged smartly throughout the whole thing. It wasn't super high, it wasn't super low. Everything seemed good there. It held the power. The original 944s had a rubber center in the clutch. That's where they got their shock absorption rather than the springs in typical clutches. And the problem is, if you beat on original 944 clutches really hard, let an idiot learn how to drive stick in it, or you try to hole shot because you think it's a muscle car and you're going to do burnouts, which is stupid. Don't do that. You'll blow out your rubber center in your clutch, and then you'll get a whole lot of driveline latch, which means you're accelerating, it's fine, and then you go to let off, and there's a delay, and all of a sudden the car kind of like bucks because it's got a lot of lash. And the only way to fix that is then replace the clutch. The other problem is then you potentially get an, you know, it'll be unbalanced, and then it'll vibrate and stuff too. Replacing clutches in 944s, not the easiest thing on planet Earth, so don't beat up your clutch. No reason to try to do big burnouts inside the step to clutch anyway. Heating was working. You know, the AC is actually up here. This is the AC blower. This is the regular fan blower. And then old school controls from your cold to your temperature, your heat, defroster. And then this is to change the flappers going up and down. I actually really, really love climate control systems are this way. As an example, the Mercedes SL 500 that I'm having such a debacle with Mercedes and the dealerships trying to screw over the nice lady and the warranty, she's having issues getting the thing to go hot or cold or do that because it's all electronic garbage, which fails. But even though this car is a better part of 40 years old, all these controls still work because they have actual cables and things actually controlling flappers that work. So doing something a little more rudimentary like this is great. It works. It stands the test of time. So the dashboard is something that also cracks a lot when they're in the sun. If you find a dashboard that isn't cracked, that means it's been garaged most of its life, which is a nice thing. This one, here along the edges where you can see it, you don't see any cracking, but it is in fact starting to crack up here at the top by the vents. It's not horrible. There's a crack here, crack here. This is very livable. It takes a fair amount of work to replace it, and there's something kind of charming about the original. So I'm going to leave that alone, but you know, if I park this in the sun in the summer, I'm going to put in a windshield reflector. That's a smart thing to do there. Other than that, I mean, it's got the original manual. Ooh, sunglasses. I wonder if there's something 80s in here. No, I don't get aviators. How boring. So that's that. There's some of the vents are missing here, but I imagine I can source one of these, not too difficult. There's a lot of these things that have kind of rotted away to part out. The windows are going up and down nicely and working, and the seats, of course, are decent. So generally, I'm quite pleased with the interior. I need to replace this vent. I need to be sympathetic about my dashboard. Otherwise, everything works. The doors, when you open and shut them, they were really sticking. They felt kind of metallic. So I used some spray lubricant from Worth, actually a German company. It goes in kind of like WD-40, and then it immediately coagulates and kind of turns to like a grease, which is nice because it gets in the cracks. And of course, I sprayed that on the pivot points and the catch here, and that all worked really nicely. So in general, really happy with the interior. The only thing that's need to happen is replace this vent, work on the sunroof, how that goes, and maybe the upholstery on the sunroof. But otherwise, quite happy with that. And I'm just going to give some, you know, the care products for the leather seats here, and, you know, vacuum it. It does look like somebody likely replaced this boot. This boot is nice and supple. There's no way this is the original boot from the 80s, but it is a correct Porsche one. I do want to make a note. The last 944 I had, I got a wooden shift knob that was laminated, similar to what was in like the 908s, 910s, and Porsche 917s from the late 60s and early 70s, because it was super cool. And I made a special stick for it. But there's enough vibration transmitted through the linkages in the metal that when it transmits through the metal up into that wooden ball, it acted like a speaker. It was the weirdest thing. If I would touch it it would get quieter, but then if I would put my hand just slightly above it would be louder. It was the strangest acoustic. So the stock shifter in a 944 I actually quite like. You can put your hand on this way or this way. It works really good ergonomically, and it keeps some of that sound out. So honestly, I'm really pleased with the stock shifter in a 944. It's got a little play here, but it's not the worst in the world. Play front to rear, it's got some, but that's pretty reasonable. So you could always replace your bushings and you'll be good to go. Looks like nobody ever smoked in the car. Here, these earrings. Hey, honey, you want some random earrings? Actually, it's funny. So this 944 came with earrings. The last one I had, I opened up, and it came with some condoms. No, they weren't used. Oh, I got a cassette deck thing here. I don't have any cassettes. Maybe someday I will. So this is good, and no use condoms. But it does have a cassette tape player that I think works, probably from a little later time. Might suck. This is the speaker balance from front to rear on the original. I don't know if that still is hooked up to work, but you leave it in, it's kind of nostalgic. Anyway, let's go on. Let's check out the trunk of this. I want to show you guys some other things to look out, and of course the engine bay. I'm going to run over here, grab my key. And just a note for all you guys, this is the Kawasaki GPZ 900, which is Maverick's motorcycle from the movie Top Gun in the 80s. Just got the seat reupholstered and waiting on the bodywork, so I hope you guys will stay tuned for that as well. But let's check out the trunk area so you know what to look for when you're getting a 944. Now, first of all, these keys are just like from Volkswagen in the 80s, same sort of thing, so they're easier to get new ones recut if you need. On the older cars, when you're using things like the truck, things stick. So you got to be ginger and delicate when you're turning keys, because if they're sticking, you don't want to break a key off in it. This one's working pretty nice, and I lubricated it. Shocks are easy to come by at any auto parts store if it's not staying up well. And then, of course, here's the rear wiper. But the first thing I do is, you can see how faded the carpet is. This has got a little bit of fade, but not too bad. So it's been in the sun, but not the worst in the world. These fold up, and you can look down in here. Okay, and old school, it's got some button snaps here, which I really like. It, you know, it functions just fine. It's also utilitarian. But we're going to take this, we're just going to fold this up and see. But before I do that, let's see, how do you do this? I got to remember how. The seat folds forward. How do you do that? Gosh, it's been a while. Is it like this? This one is different than I remember. Hold on. Oh, you push that forward. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so you push that forward. This 944 also has this drape that comes across the back, and it hooks on here. So if you put some stuff, if you're out shopping with your wife or something, you can throw it there so people don't see it, or gets it out of the sun. All right, so we fold that forward. You get your sound deadening. If it cracks, that's no big deal. You don't see it, and it still works. These are the Space Saver tires. If you use them, they're supposed to poof up. There's a little bit of surface rust on this wheel, but I've got the original jack, so that's nice, although I've never used one. Oh, let's see, is there tools? Now, if this was a vintage Ferrari or a vintage Porsche, everybody would lose their minds about having tools, because that's such a thing. Oh my gosh, oh, it's a vintage Ferrari. I'll give you $20,000 for your tool set. Yes, oh, fantastic, I'll lose my mind. Oh, yes, I've bought and sold Fortune 500 companies, but if my Ferrari doesn't have its tool set, I'll lose my mind. Give me a break. Actually, it's kind of cool. I guess this is the original tool set. It's got some funky German-looking leather or pleather or whatever it is. And it's in good shape, so whatever. I got it. Hooray. I'll never use it. And yeah, I'm making fun of people that get loony about tool sets. I know, you like it. And I had a Cobra back when, and I sourced all the old tools from England. Hooray. I just think it's funny how people get out of touch with all that sort of thing. Now, when you look at a trunk here, you can always, you can also tell if maybe the car's been wrecked, if you see a funky wrinkle or kind of paint, or you might see rust on the inside, but I'm really not seeing any of that, or if water sits in it, or there's leaves, etc. So frankly, I think this one's had a pretty nice life, and that makes me happy. So, and then of course the snaps here, you see, they're just these metal snaps, and they go on here just kind of like a varsity jacket or something. Yeah. Okay, I'll do the rest of that later so I don't bore the heck out of you guys. But you got a pretty nice big open trunk area here, if you have a look at that. So it's very usable. Very nice in that regard. You know, the old, the old weather stripping's in great condition. A lot of American cars, weather stripping gets bad. Even my Viper's starting to go bad. So that's something else to pay attention to, especially if you're gonna drive it a lot, is how's your weather stripping? Is it cracked like the Sahara Desert? Is it still supple enough? The strips here by the windows, this still has some nice flex to it. It's not cracking. It's pretty reasonable to use as a relatively normal car. So let's check out the engine bay here, you guys. Now, some things on this car, such as the windshield wipers and the lights, are coming up and down slowly now. So a little bit of the lubricant may help. Also, the electrical is a little off, so we're going to find out what's going on with that. I have a feeling this battery has seen much better days. I'm just going to go ahead and disconnect it. So hopefully it's not discharging, but it didn't want to start today when it was cold. And we'll see. I'll put a charge on it. Probably get a new one. I don't know how old it is. Doesn't say. Hard to say. But in looking at it, generally quite clean. You know, it's not absolutely filthy where it was driving through dirt roads and things like that. Of course, there's a lot of leaves in here, but these leaves can tumble down through the gap in the hood in this area on the early ones. They don't have like a grill or anything there. So you get them out and you look underneath and there's no rot in the metal and whatnot. This is where it intakes for the cabin air, and that all works fine, so no issues here. And then when you're looking throughout, you just want to see if things are generally well connected. Is there anything funky going on with the wiring? With this car, I see two things that generally pop out to me as not stock, and a third thing that shows me maintenance. One, it's got red spark plug wires. So it says that they are super stock radio suppression core. It works, it runs fine, what it does run, so somebody put new spark plug wires on. The coil wire here, I sure hope this audio is working because I'm bonking into it. The coil wire here appears to be original. It's kind of hard, assuming it's still working, but the spark plug wires are red and fancy or whatever. Let's see if they've got funky boots on it or I ruin them. Okay, so that's kind of ripped right there. The boot actually has a seal so that it, you know, you don't get debris down in that spark plug hole. This one has ripped. I don't know if these spark plug wires are really for this car or not. And it depends on how you're going to drive the car. If you're going to drive it on nice days in summer, you may not need those seals, but these don't fit the greatest. Also, if you notice this cam here, this is for the throttle, and this is a simple fix. This pulley is obviously round. It is a 1-to-1 pull. So when you pull it here, it pulls it 1-to-1. The stock pulley on a 944 has this kind of arm to come off, because apparently they thought a 4-cylinder Porsche was too touchy and hard to drive because it was such a insane supercar that they put this out here so when you first touch the throttle, it's not as touchy. But for any performance driver, that's really annoying. You have to push the throttle way too hard to make it do anything. So this is just a cheap little fix just to make the throttle a little more responsive. I do see here on the brake vacuum seal here, I'm assuming that's the vacuum to the booster. It does appear that it might have some glue or something here fixing it. It might have leaked. I don't know. Or maybe that's like some plastic kind of corrosion. We'll see. So that's something I'm going to pay attention to. Don't want to lose my brake vacuum boost at any given time. You know, it's got brake fluid. The coolant's just a touch low, but it's not bad. And in general, it looks quite good. So I was generally pleased with all of that. You know, this car, people that talk about it being hard to work on, it's really not. I can see the exhaust headers, the exhaust manifold here real easy. I can see every single one of the nuts that hold the exhaust manifold on. You can get your hands in there. You can work on all this upper stuff easy. You can get to all the spark plug wires. I don't understand why people think this is hard to work on. Obviously, you got your intake right here. The last 944 I had a leak between the cam housing and the head, because actually the head is here and then the cam housing is up here with lifters and such. It had a leak and it was leaking a little bit of oil down to the headers. So I had to replace that, and I just did it in a day with a buddy helping me. The timing belt is inside here, goes down in here. There's also the timing belt that works the balance shafts that are down in there, and that's something we're going to do coming up. We're going to replace the timing belts together, so I want you guys to see how either easy or difficult it is. I do look down here, and you can see this is right where the Porsche water pump is. That's a famous thing that when you're working on it, they're always like, well, replace your water pump because of it, blah, 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 blah. So they always talk you into doing your water pump too. This guy here is a plug, but as you can see, this is also kind of set up to where you could use it for another hose coming off. I could be wrong, so forgive me. but I seem to remember years ago replacing a water pump and it having one of these and putting that on, and that was when I replaced the water pump. It had a new one. So it's possible that it has a relatively new water pump on. I seem to remember the original not having that piece. So we shall see when we dig into it. I did see some oil residue that was getting very dirty on the bottom, so we might have a leaking seal at one of those balance shafts. I'm also feeling the radiator hose. You know, it feels nice and supple, feels relatively new, so that's good. And that's just what it is. So much about cars honestly does come down to feel and what it is, especially if you as an owner are relatively sympathetic mechanic or paying attention to it. Porsche people like to turn into freaks. Every time it's a mark, they're like, oh, we need the records, like we're maintaining a Gulfstream private jet, and everything needs to be done and signed off in triplicate by 4 people, and everything must be replaced at exact intervals. Yeah, that's not really the case at all. It's a car, okay? There's conditions of life, conditions of driving. So just pay attention to it and you do things as is necessary. Of course, the freaks that do all this, that have giant paper trails, can probably ask more money for the car and they may not get it. And some people like that sort of thing. I just like maintaining a car, doing a good job, and not losing a bunch of money for the sake of losing a bunch of money and having a great car. But snobs don't like that, because if you do it that way, it doesn't make them feel important. I'd rather help you guys find a good deal and have a great time owning your car. So, but it is important that you don't have a timing belt brake, otherwise you're going to bend valves and you're not going to have a good time. So we're going to replace it, going to do a great job. No, I do not have the special Porsche tensioning tool. You know what I'm going to use? My fingers and my brain and my eyes and my ears. As an example, if I'm not mistaken, when you do later Lotus Esprits, there's a fancy tool where you're actually supposed to do everything with the timing belt and then strum it, and it tells you if it's the proper tension. But the strumming is just telling you what note, what musical note it's hitting. So if you look it up and find out what it's supposed to be, you can just get a guitar tuner with your cell phone, strum it, and see which note it hits, and then know if it's right. So these are the tricks to it that make it a lot of fun, and I'm going to show you guys how to do as well. The glass is generally pretty good. I do see a little bit of some streaking here, maybe some very tiny fine scratches, nothing that's going to be bothersome. Obviously, we'll clean this up. I have new blades. I do think that I'm going to need some new weather stripping around the sunroof or moonroof or whatever the heck you want to call it. I just take it out, and it's a lot of fun. And generally clean it up. Now, these wheels, a fun thing relating to the 928 over here, and we're going to do this car next. If you come on over here and look at this, both the 928 and this 944 have what are called phone dialer wheels because they kind of look like an old school round dial phone. On the 928, if you notice, the offset is different. The middle part sticks out a lot. The wheels are inset with the tires. So you can kind of see where these are raised up in comparison to the rim area. Whereas on the 944, the rim is sticking out. It's inset, so it has a much different offset. The offset is, I think, 1.75 inches difference. Now, something I noticed on the 928, there's a huge gap between the rear one and the fender well, and I thought to myself, well, heck, I don't really like the phone dialers on the 944 that much anyway. Wouldn't it be cool if I took the rears off of this with the better gap, stuck them on the 928, and they stuck out better? This car would look great. Well, I thought it was really smart until my buddy realized, hey, idiot, the 944 has 15-inch diameter wheels, the 928 has 16-inch. So much for that idea. I guess they're going to stay in the same places, but it was pretty fun. Car definitely needs new tires. Those are cracked. Brakes seem decent. We'll see. So basically, the first step I'm going to do is clean it up, get the leaves out, clean up the outside, see how it looks. I'm going to clean out the interior, and we're just going to initially clean up, protect it. So things that are supposed to be draining, like the wing, we're going to clean those out. We're going to worry about the weather stripping, all that, so it's preserved. Needs new tires. I'm going to get some of those coming for this. These are 15-inch. The wheels are in generally pretty good condition, so I think I could polish the paint and they'll be fine, especially for a car I want to drive more. The 928 wheel paint looks terrible, so I'm going to have these redone and powder coated. So that'll be a little bit later. But I'm going to run these, going to get some different tires. Now, if you guys recall, I talk crap about other YouTubers, how when they get money and fame, they take a car like this just because it's inexpensive and ruin it. They'll rally it. I saw some YouTubers like jumping a Porsche 911 on concrete and just destroying it, literally destroying the car, and a Miata too. And I think that's really crass. Just because something isn't worth a whole lot doesn't mean you should destroy it just for fun. But rally racing is perfectly fine, and I think there's some ways to do it where you're not going to harm your car. You're just going to have to clean it up. So this is a light pod I kept for many years. I got it somewhere in the south of France. And this is the rally light pod that goes on here. And what I want to do is find a way to attach it that does the least amount of effort to the car. I would prefer not to drill this. Maybe I'll have to drill a little bit. But of course, there's a lot of these panels that exist on other 944s, and if I ever were to replace it, I surely could. So if this isn't your guys' taste, don't worry, I can always take it back. But so that's kind of a fun thing there, and I've got the little mud flaps, and I had a great fun thing, and I think you guys are gonna love this. So a buddy of mine, he's got a beautiful piece of property, rolling hills, woods, he's got a shooting range, he's got a four-wheeler and everything like that, and he's got a Raptor, okay? And he says to me, we should rally the 944 against the Raptor. So check this out. How about I get some proper rally tires for the things with the flaps and the lights. And when it's snowing out and everything's covered in, you know, like a few inches of snow, we do a biathlon or triathlon kind of thing where we have to, I don't know, like do some running, and then we race the Raptor and the 944 against each other, and then like have to like do some target shooting like they do in the Olympics. How cool would that be? So without hurting the car, of course, because I really like this car. I want to keep it a very long time. But I think that's going to be a lot of fun and something that hopefully you guys can relate to finding a car like this for as reasonably priced as $3,000, and then what you have to put in it to fix it up, to really enjoy it and have a great vintage car, but to really maximize your enjoyment out of it and doing fun things like that, rather than just going to some boring club and let us compare paperwork and all of these fun things. Yes, I drove my car, I think 3 years ago, because driving is scary and puts miles on and ruins the value. Yeah, who wants to do that? I want to have fun before I die. And I think you guys too, do too. So hope you come back soon and that you will like, comment, and subscribe. See you guys next time.